Good afternoon, everyone. Another round of applause and a great big thank you to our band, our Virgin Islands Youth Ensemble, Dion Parsons, and UVI's Mentoring Through the Arts and Music Project. Thank you. So, good afternoon, students, faculty, staff, trustees, UVI community, here in the Sports and Fitness Center, and those who are listening to us live stream on the Albert A. Sheen campus on St. Croix in the Great Hall. Welcome and good afternoon. As many of you know, I'm Camille McHale, UVI's Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. And as is likely the case for many of you, this is my first time and my first opportunity to be in the same room as a Supreme Court Justice. So I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited too. And so lest we forget in our excitement, proper decorum, I'm going to remind us. No phones, please. So please silence all your phones. I'm sure there is nothing more important for the next hour and a half than listening to what's going on in this room. So off or at least on airplane mode or silenced. No pictures, not with your cell phones, not with cameras. No walking around during the event. And just general respect. I expect it. I'm just reminding you because I'm all jitters up here myself. At this time, I'd like to invite our speakers to the podium, well, not to the podium, but to the stage. I'd like to invite our president, our board of trustees, president, Chairman Smock, Jeanette Ferdinand of the St. Croix SGA, and DeWin Pell, St. Thomas SGA. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It is my honor and pleasure to invite to the stage Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Kids ask me what has changed in my life since becoming a Supreme Court justice. I tell them that the most significant change is that I no longer sit in audiences observing. I'm always in the front and middle of the room.
Well, we are happy you're in front of our room today. Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite our Chairman of the Board of Trustees of UVI's Board of Trustees, Chairman Smock.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Board of Trustees and the entire UVI community, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome the Honorable Sonia Sotomayor, Justice of the United States Supreme Court. As in your past opinions, Justice, your words today will undoubtedly inspire a greater appreciation that justice is a precious commodity and must be guarded over by capable and learned persons such as yourself. Justice Sotomayor, you are given our warmest welcome today. Thank you for being here.
And now we invite to the podium our Student Government Association President for the St. Thomas campus, DeWin Pell.
Just like when sun meets the sea, the University of the Virgin Islands is a center for quality student development that meets the pragmatic mindset of a community. Good afternoon to the student body, faculty, staff, esteemed guests, President Hall, and the Honorable Justice Sotomayor. Comparatively to whenever any student matriculates and ultimately graduates from this glorious institution, the presentation of an esteemed honor to an individual that has etched a mark on American history adds a great taste to the gusto of this university. I am humbled to have the opportunity to welcome a new member of the UVI community. It is befitting that since academia is an avenue for men and women to explore opportunities that satisfy their individual passions and convictions, a well-regarded guest who happens to hold one of the highest seats followed her dreams and overcame cultural stigma currently sits among us as a new member of our intellectual kinship. Most of us can certainly reminisce on the impediments that have been busy in our lives. However, we must all feel the sensation of triumph which has brought us here. As I have certainly been positioned to achieve great things at a young age from my family and community members, I too can admit that I have never seen this surmountable. However, a moment like this, at the cusp of change within the mainland and the Virgin Islands, I can certainly say that this is an inspiration to become better versions of ourselves, a community, and an institution. On the verge of our VI Centennial celebration, as a treasured portion of American history, and UVI's 55th year as a beacon of advancement, it is noteworthy that we are continuing to expand our arms of brotherhood by having an iconic American figure step on our soil as a new voice within our UVI community. Nonetheless, the grace, humility, and vigor presented by Justice Sotomayor and her persistence to not allow her life to be overcome by manifestation of her failures allowed her to be chosen by the first Black U.S. president to become the Supreme Court's 111th justice, the first Hispanic justice, and the third woman to serve in her position. She is certainly a small fish from a small town. A New Yorican at heart, a woman who saw beyond her own existence to facilitate the growth of her country. Our institution is ever growing and has positioned us to as a premier institute within Caribbean waters with an infusion of Caribbean and American soul. As students with a vast array of backgrounds, we certainly seek guidance and change as a people. Thus, we continue to ask for enlightenment and countless forms of achievement for the university. The student body graciously thanks you for your service, your sisterhood, your powerful stance, and most importantly, your struggle. You are a lighthouse for many who feel lost at sea. To them, you are the embodiment of sacrifice and service, pride and hope, and we welcome you as you sail out of the sunset and onto the pearly white beaches of our alma mater by the sea. Thank you.
Thank you, DeWin. And now, And now I'd like to invite President Hall back to the podium.
Good afternoon again. It is a special honor on behalf of the entire University of the Virgin Islands community to welcome you to this event and to have the privilege of introducing at this student convocation one of our most distinguished guests in the history of this university, Justice Sonia Sotomayor. As a member of the legal profession and a former law professor, it is a rare and coveted opportunity for me to introduce a member of the highest court of this land. After an illustrious career as a student, lawyer, and judge, on May 26, 2009, President Barack Obama announced his nomination of Judge Sotomayor for the Supreme Court. The nomination was confirmed by the U.S. Senate, making her the first Hispanic Supreme Court justice in U.S. history. In the United States governmental framework, the Supreme Court plays an extremely critical role. In a society where the will of the majority could easily trample the rights and protections of those who are vulnerable, discarded, and disempowered, the Supreme Court was created as the guardian of the constitutional rights of all citizens. And though it has not always lived up to this high mandate, we are fortunate that many justices have remained true to this vision and calling. Justice Sotomayor falls in that tradition. She is a legal realist who understands that the Constitution must be interpreted and applied, in her own words, to the realities of ever-changing social, industrial, and political conditions. She has rejected formalistic blindfolds so that she can truly see the people, circumstances, and challenges that come before the court. And in the process, she has helped to usher into existence protections for citizens that did not previously exist. Justice Sotomayor has been woven by a Puerto Rican culture not far from these islands, and by a people who share this space with us in the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. She is part of us and carries with her a calling to serve those who are easily forgotten. Justice Sotomayor is a voice crying in the wilderness of flawed legal constructs, trying to breathe justice into rules and into human lives. Our desire is that her experience with us today becomes a stronger wind beneath her wings as she continues to carry out this awesome responsibility. Justice Sotomayor is more than a judge on the highest court of the United States. She is an inspirational reminder that dreams do come true. She is living proof that barriers created to lock people out can be broken. She is the best evidence that excellence does not belong to any race, gender, or nationality. Her achievements, despite obstacles and setbacks, are a clarion call to our students and students around the world that hard work, perseverance, values, and dreams are still the ultimate keys to success and to a good life. The University of the Virgin Islands is honored to host the student convocation for Justice Sotomayor during this year in which the Virgin Islands commemorates its historical connection to the United States. The transfer of these beautiful islands from the Danish to the United States created a legal conundrum that this nation nor its courts have adequately resolved, but which impacts the lives of Virgin Islanders every day. And we know that her presence here will make her and the court even more sensitive to those challenges. So with great humility, with deep respect, I present to you Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Sonia Sotomayor, who will answer questions developed and presented by our students. Justice Sotomayor.
Thank you very much. I have been on the islands since Tuesday night, and I have been as warmly welcomed as any human being could be. I have traveled and seen St. Croix. I will, before I leave tomorrow, see a little bit of St. Thomas again. I am revisiting, but the last time I was here was more than 15 years ago, and I wasn't as famous then. A lot has changed since then. I didn't have marshals then, those wonderful people who keep me safe. And back then, I could actually wear a bathing suit. Today, I have to wear a cover-up. But besides the changes of sitting in the front of the room always, one of the things I value the most about this new world that I'm in, this new life that I have, is that I get these opportunities to interact with people and learn about them, the issues that they are concerned about, and the human qualities that we share together. Our amazing islands. I don't know that I really noticed when I was last here how diverse the population of the islands is. And what is so wonderful and different from where I come from is that people of different backgrounds, races, colors, and ethnicities are actually friends with one another. You have a lot to teach the mainland. I'm going to go back, and I explained that one of the things the justices do is regularly have lunch together. We have lunch after every argument, but we have lunch after every Friday conference, which we have almost every Friday morning. What we'll do this coming conference at lunch is talk about what we did. And I'm going to be encouraging my colleagues to come to the Virgin Islands. Now, I know students have questions, and so I'm going to let them get up and ask the questions. I'm going to circle around the room, and I've been telling every audience, my marshals are here to protect me, not from you, but from myself. They don't like me doing this because they worry about me. They worry more that I'll fall or something like that. But if you don't jump up unexpectedly, they won't get nervous. I'll reach over, I'll shake your hands, I may even give an occasional hug. But if you stay put, they'll stay put, okay? So, who will be the first student? You got to tell me what your name is, what year in college you're in, and what you're studying. How's that? Can I have down these steps? Thanks. Thank you. Go ahead and thank you.
Good afternoon.
Excuse me. I don't know how many of you remember, but I broke my ankle. You should be listening during my confirmation process. And one of the lingering things is that my ankle's a little weak. And so when I'm stepping, I always need help. So people like Judge Lewis, who's with me today, and Karen, who is the head of my security here, provide. So I'm always grateful to them for keeping me safe. But go ahead.
Good afternoon, Madam Judge. It is indeed an honor to welcome you to the University of the Virgin Islands. We're thrilled to have you, and we're definitely excited to have you. I'm Dwayne Hendrickson, a major in accounting, a junior major, actually. I was previously the president of the day and served as the student ambassador for Thurgood Marshall College Fund. And my question for you today is, what do you think your success in being appointed to the highest court in the land contributes to this nation and its future? What misconceptions might people have about them?
Well, come and turn around, and that lovely photographer will take a picture of us. I'm going to answer your question, okay? But I'm going to say something to many audiences, especially of students, and particularly for freshmen and sophomores who are suffering with, what am I going to become? What major am I going to take? What life path am I going to follow? That anxiety can sometimes be overwhelming because you're unsure. What if I do this, I lose out on that? What if I do this and a door closes here? Will the other door open there? Those are legitimate concerns, but they shouldn't be all-consuming concerns. You see, I'm a very firm believer that every person contributes when they're passionate about what they're doing. If you like what you're doing and you think it's important, then you will make yourself make a contribution. Your success will be the success of our community, and it will improve the lives of the people you touch. So you're going to hate me. I tell kids all the time, you know, I'm pretty good at math, but I would be bored stiffless if I was an accountant. And people don't think of accounting as particularly helpful to other people, but it really is. It is. It helps businesses stay in business so they can employ people. Many accountants I know, as contributing public service, take on not-for-profit organizations and help them with their books so they can stay alive and afloat. You can take any job that you have and make it meaningful to society. You can become a bus driver who every morning says hello to you and smiles. If you that kind of bus driver, doesn't that make your day better? When you go into a store and a salesperson starts talking to you and helping you out and making jokes with you, you leave that store feeling happy, don't you? And often they've made a sale because of it. But my point is that unless it's illegal activity, any job you take will make a difference. If you're doing it with that passion and love so that you make people feel good about themselves. And so my success, I think, I hope, is that when people look at how far I have gone in life from where I started, because I think most of you know that I was born into a working class New York family whose income was low enough so that we qualified for public housing in the Bronx. We lived in one of the poorest neighborhoods of the nation. It was the neighborhood with the highest crime in the entire United States. There's a movie called Fort Apache. I have had cousins die of drug addiction. My father died of alcoholism at age 42. My mother worked to support 2 kids by herself. Am I telling the story of a lot of people in this room? All right. I think when you see where I started and where I've gone, that it, I hope, gives people hope. Now, every once in a while, that's confirmed for me. Last night at the community center, community event in St. Croix at the local cardiac hospital, a woman got up and told me about her young child, a young man of mixed heritage, Puerto Rican, and he calls himself Puerto Rican and mulatto, who when President Obama was elected, looked at his mother and said, "Is it possible a kid like me could become president?" And she said, "Yes." And his response was, "I'm not sure. I come from here." When I was nominated, she reports, he looked at her and said, "She's Puerto Rican like me. You were right, Mommy. I can do and become anything I want to." For me, my life's already a success with that story. Because if I've changed one life, that's enough for me. That I might be able to change more is what I hope for. That's why I'm here among you. If one of you someday writes to me and tells me that you did something because of something I said, then my life has become more meaningful. So that, I think, is for me the greatest success of what I've done. But as I explained in my book, I didn't do it alone. Nobody does it alone. Have you ever heard rich people say, "I did it by myself"? You don't know rich people, right? I didn't either when I was a kid, okay? But a lot of people who have done well will look at you and say, "I did it by myself. I did it all." What bull. Nobody does it by themselves. You don't run a business. You don't work by yourself. Everybody has either an assistant or employees and others who help them. If you're really lucky, you have family the way I do, and you have friends that make a difference and pick you up when you fall down and dust you off and kick you back out. Or you have family who stands by you through the thick and thin of life. So none of us do it by ourselves. My success is a product of what you, the students, are going to go out to do when you finish. And it's my hope that what you will do is become involved and caring citizens. And that's the example that I'm trying to set. It's the example that I'm hoping that you will follow. Because everything you do to make your community a little bit better helps not you get ahead, but helps the kid behind you get ahead. And so that's what success means to me. There was a second part of your question, which is, what is little known about, or what was the word you used? Misunderstood?
Misconceptions.
Misconceptions. You know, as I was being introduced, and someone said that I was the 111th Justice, all I can think about was my grandmother. My grandmother supported herself when she first got to the mainland, to New York, by playing the lottery. She used to dream numbers. And every time I hear somebody say the 111th Justice, I keep thinking to myself, if she were alive, she'd be playing that number every single day. There are so many misperceptions, starting with that somehow I'm a Latina justice. I'm a justice. All the other justices are justices. We have different life experiences. We come from different backgrounds. We have done different work. We've been involved in different activities. And all of that makes us the person we are. It doesn't make me representative of all Latinos. It doesn't make me representative of anybody. It makes me Sonia. And when Sonia votes on a case, I never think about how would a Latino vote on this case. I think about how should a justice vote on this case. And those are very different approaches to thinking about both law and one's role in a society. Now, justices have to think about, and President Hall mentioned this, I think, about how our decisions impact people. And having come from a particular background, I can be sensitive to what that impact is. But I can't rule just because of the impact. I can share that information with my colleagues. I can talk to them about it. But they and me can only vote the way we think the law commands. And sometimes the impact is good, and sometimes it's not. But if we don't respect the role we play in the greater society, then we try to become God. See, I can't vote based on what I think is right because I'm not sure I know what right is. You know, when two people are in a fight, usually each side has a point. And if each side has a point, and I'm trying to play God and say, I, God, think this is the judgment I'm going to give you, you're neither going to respect me, nor are you going to think the law is just. You're before me because you want a judge to tell you what the law says. And I can be informed in those judgments by my background. I am informed by it at times. But that's not the basis of my ruling. I'm ruling because I believe that this is the way and what the law commands. So I think that's the greatest misperception. It is absolutely true that every good judge will render a decision or more decisions that are not going to be popular. Because if you don't, then there's something wrong. But that generally, when I do, and I will, if I haven't already, forgive me, okay? And understand that I'm trying to do my job with as much integrity as I can.
Thank you, Madam Judge.
Sorry. Okay, who's the next student? I'll be up, don't worry. Don't go away because I'll take the picture even if I'm down here for a while, okay? Tell me your name.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Khadija Bolan. I'm a freshman. I am majoring in criminal justice, aspiring to be a forensic scientist. My question today for you, Madam Justice, is what is the most challenging aspect of being a U.S. Supreme Court Justice?
I almost touched on it before, and I'll finish the thought, okay? I talked about not knowing what the right answer is, and two people coming in because they each think they have the right answer. In law, there is one answer in law, and that answer makes one side only a winner. If you're a winner, what does that mean that's left? A loser. Every time I render a decision, I remember first that there's going to be a loser that's going to be unhappy. That someone is going to leave the process believing and thinking that justice wasn't done for them. And I play a role, and I have to announce that winner. But the hardest part is always remembering, no matter how right I think my vote is, and I don't vote unless I think it's right, that there's someone else who feels something has been taken away from them. And that's a heavy burden to carry. There's no decision I make that's easy. And there's no decision, no matter how much one group or another is joyful, that I don't realize comes at a cost to someone else. That's why where others rejoice in legal victories, I'm proud to be a part of a system that works to find answers. But I can't rejoice knowing that there's another side who's in sorrow. I'll be back up. Don't worry. I won't forget you.
Good afternoon, Justice Sotomayor.
I'm
Well-
not hearing you. Is that on?
Good afternoon, Justice Sotomayor. Welcome to UVI. We are very honored to have you here. My name is Dorian Cozier, and I'm a senior here at UVI pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology, and I'm also the president of the newly formed Literacy and Debate Club. My question to you as a student and a club leader is, what were the greatest challenges that you faced while in college and in starting your career?
Well, I talk about this often because I think it is the greatest challenge of most students, particularly students of diverse backgrounds. In part because our parents generally are immigrants or migrants and speak different languages, sometimes Creole, sometimes a mixture of languages. But I spoke Spanish before I spoke English. And I didn't realize that I couldn't write English until I got to college. And you're going to ask, why was that? I was a top A student during high school. I was valedictorian of my class. Well, back then, most tests were multiple choice. I have a great memory. And secondly, when there were essays, they were short things, you know? And I was insightful. And this is not bragging. I, saw things when I read. And so I would pack them in with all the things I saw, and I think my teachers were impressed that I was thinking about things. And they gave me good grades. None of them actually stopped and said, wait a minute, this is not a sentence, until college. and a professor, my first history paper, I would ultimately major in history, gave me a C. And I was shocked and devastated. And I picked myself up and I went to her office and asked her why. And she explained to me that I had too many ideas, but I didn't have theme. I hadn't really explained a thought in a cogent way, one thought or two or three, but put them in a framework that made sense. That I understood because I had been a debater in school. And so that was, when she said it, I reread the paper and I said, she's right, there's no theme here. And I went back to my debate skills, okay? And so I knew that I could figure that out by myself. So I had to think about how to figure out writing again. And I learned through books. And I decided that summer to go to the then and only one Barnes & Noble in Fifth Avenue, Manhattan. I lived in the Bronx. This was an adventure. I went down there. Back then, on one stretch of block in New York City, there were like 6 to 8 little storefronts. And every one of them was a different section of Barnes & Noble. So I had to keep walking from one section to another to find grammar books. I finally did. And I bought grammar books from 1st to 12th grade. And I reread them. And as I picked up the books, next to this section, there was a whole display of vocabulary books. And the vocabulary books had little pictures on the front that said, become a power speaker. And so I bought a bunch of those, and the book said, learn 10 new words a day, and you will become absolutely literate. And I thought to myself, 10 is too much. I'm going to do 5. I tell this for a reason, and I'll tie up the points in a moment. Then I went back to college, and I took another history course after that summer, intending to see if my writing had improved. And I took a course with another professor, and I got back a B. I had figured out the themes, but he had circled a lot of things on this paper. And I went back and talked to him, and he said, you spoke Spanish before English. And I said, yes. He said, you're doing a lot of translating when you write English. And there's a lot that doesn't translate exactly the same in the two languages. And I still remember the very first sentence. It started with the authority of dictatorship. And he said, look at this. In English, adjectives precede the noun. Dictatorial authority. It's awkward to say authority of dictatorship. And your paper is filled with that. And that's because, not all the time, but very, very often, in Spanish, adjectives are introduced with the preposition of. We don't say cotton shirt, we say shirt of cotton in Spanish. So he said, go back and fix all of that. So I searched through the paper, I fixed it, I rewrote it, he took it back, he said, you got all of them, but there's more. And I said, okay, what next? He said, I'll give you one more thing. And he pointed out to my subject and my verb not being in the right tense. I fixed that. And he said, okay, let's stop here, write the next paper, and we'll do more. I wrote about 8 papers for him. And over that time, including my senior thesis, and over that time, he showed and taught me more. So what are the lessons of this story? Number 1, ask for help. I find it so startling when a student who doesn't know tells me they do. I think the stupidest judges, lawyers, are the ones who are being questioned by judges who try to give an answer when they really don't know. There is absolutely nothing to be ashamed about in saying, I don't know or I don't understand. And yet most people are ashamed of that. Why? You should be more ashamed that you're not learning the answer than that you don't know the answer. But I have never, ever in my entire life hesitated in saying, I don't know or I need help. In my book, I tell a story that I didn't remember. It's not my story. I don't remember it. It's a story of a classmate from grammar school. And she told me this story when I was writing my book because she had reconnected with me through the Supreme Court nomination. And she told me that in 5th grade, which is where I began to be a good student, I had gone up to her and said, Donna, I don't know how to study. How do you study? She was the smartest kid in the class. She now says it was the stupidest thing she did because then I got better grades than she did. But I didn't remember I did that. But I do know that even today in conference, when somebody says something I don't understand, I'm the first one to say, I don't know that reference. And almost all the time, some other colleague will bend over and say, I didn't know it either. And sometimes nobody will say that. But at least I've walked away a little bit smarter. And so I asked my history teacher, the first one and the second one, the question of why. Why was I getting a bad grade? And I looked for someone who would help me to learn. The second lesson of that challenge
Thank you.
was helping myself. You see, there is nothing that comes natural in life. People think there are natural athletes. There are some athletes that have more skill than other people, you know. They have a better sense of coordination. They may have a better eye. They may have a better swing. They may have whatever. But they have to practice to become perfect. A baby doesn't get up and start running or walking with perfection. We practice until we improve. And so that was a life lesson for me about how to succeed in life. To understand that it took two things: asking for help, but my making sure that the person who was giving me the help knew that I was trying to work with it. That's my key to the challenges. But I think that that moment in college, which was the first one I remembered of my sort of getting up and saying, I'm going to do something. I'm going to improve my writing so I can be successful in college. It worked. And I do that with everything I've done in life. I look for help. And sometimes I read books, but then I go and talk to people and make sure that what the book tells me makes sense. That's how I learned to play poker, by the way.
Thank you, Madam Justice.
Ready? Good day, Madam Justice. My name is Kiana Tung. I am a second semester sophomore. I am majoring in early childhood education, and I am currently the treasurer of Student Government Association at the Albert Einstein campus. And my question reads, what are your greatest strengths and limitations as a U.S. Supreme Court Justice?
You know, I had seen these questions beforehand. And this one was the toughest. A, you don't want to brag about yourself. But B, you don't want to admit your flaws either. You know, we live in this fine balance. What's my greatest strength? I think it's I'm dogged. I just won't give up. I'm often asked what's the greatest strength that I have. And I tell kids all the time it's that I'm stubborn. But a good stubborn. If I can't figure something out, I won't work at it until I do. And I won't let anything stop me from trying to figure out the right answer. And that actually, I think, works in anything in life, but it has worked as a Supreme Court justice. You know, I'll tell an example, a story. You might not like my telling this story. One of my colleagues in a tax case wrote that he wasn't going to bother to learn the math because he was a judge and it was too complicated. Well, I thought that was just insane. You give cases to judges because you want us to figure out the answer. And you're trusting us to take the time and give the effort to do it. And so, for me, that, I think, is what marks what I do. I'm not the smartest person in the room, but I work really hard at what I do. What's my greatest limitation? I'm not the smartest person in the room. And that's humbling. I had that experience when I was in college, and especially in law school, where I went to Yale Law School that has some of the smartest people in the whole wide world. And I felt dumb a lot. And sometimes I hear my colleagues talking, and I think to myself, how did they think of that? Why didn't I see that? It's a weakness because not seeing it is not great, but admitting it to yourself is hard. But I do. And that's where the first thing helps me, because I recognize it, and I'm willing to work hard to try to figure it out.
Thank you.
Good day, Justice Sotomayor. Welcome to the University of the Virgin Islands. We are pleased that you are here with us today. My name is Andrea Dorsey, and I am a doctoral student of our university's first PhD program in creative leadership for innovation and change.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
Thank you. I am also an academic advisor here at UVI at the Center for Student Success. My question is, you are known as a strong advocate for diversity. What value is added to the Supreme Court when it includes justices from different racial, gender, age, and economic groups?
Hello. Now I'm going to back up a little bit, okay? Because I think that diversity, not just in those categories, but in every way, helps the Supreme Court. I'm most worried today, not about the lack of that diversity, but the lack of professional diversity on the court. And by that I mean, there is not one single justice who has criminal defense experience. Every justice has either government experience or prosecutorial experience. We supervise criminal law. It's made up of two sides. Having people who have practiced and been involved in the most important aspects of legal practice is important. I mentioned criminal law. We have nobody with environmental law background. We have nobody with immigration background. We have only one civil rights lawyer, and that was on women's rights. But nobody with race, ethnicity, handicap, educational rights, knowledge or experience in any of those areas. So what does that lack mean? It certainly doesn't mean that the justices don't try to understand both sides of any issue that comes before them. We try hard. But having people on the court who can share what their perspective in practice was adds some value to the nature of the conversation. When Thurgood Marshall died, Sandra Day O'Connor said, "He forced us always to look at the people who we were judging. No other justice brought to the deliberative process that humanity." That's a gift. And it doesn't mean that because you bring your voice on, as I said earlier, the impact or the feeling or the experience, that the justices are going to rule your way. But you take more comfort in knowing they've at least considered that. Because the worst decisions are the ones in which you don't take note of what you're doing. Sometimes you'll get it right, sometimes you'll get it wrong, but if you're at least aware, it's a better decision, more often than not. And so for me, yes, I worry about lack of diversity. We have no justice who's not from an Ivy League school. We have no justice from a public school education. We had no justice currently that's not Jewish or Catholic. Now, some people would say, but you're religious and so you can figure it out. Yes, we can. But it is a more rich conversation when people are talking about what they know. And so for me, if I were a congressperson, as many senators asked me when I was interviewing with them for this nomination, and they'd ask me how to pick a judge, I would say start with looking at the bench you're picking for, see what they do, and find somebody who does something different. And I still believe that that's sound advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to come up, so wait, and I'm going to take a picture with you, finally, and with the other people who, and then I'm going to walk to the other side, okay? Turn around. Hello, Alex. Thank you, sir. You haven't spoken. I'll come back to you. Thank you. Going back there and doing the same thing. Thank you. Thanks.
You could go ahead and ask the question. Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Justice. My name is Alex Cintron. I am a senior by credits, applied mathematics major on the Albert H. Eaton campus. Honorable.
I have to say, you guys did a great job of picking people doing different things.
Hey,
I really admire that. Thank you.
all right.
Go ahead.
Honorable Justice Sotomayor,
My gosh. a little
what
bit more.
advice would you give to
Yeah,
Hispanic students
But I was on there.
about pursuing a career in law?
All right, let's talk about what I think law is, okay? And this is advice for everybody. For me, law has to be a passion. First of all, law schools are very expensive today. They're no longer the safety net they used to be, because to become a lawyer, you're going to pay a lot of money. But even though you have to pay a lot of money, it's really worth it if it's something that excites you. Because lawyers do so much good for society. There's a lot of jokes about bad lawyers. I don't let people do that in front of me, because it was lawyers who made my life. Under Thurgood Marshall and his team at the NAACP Fund, they for decades figured out a strategy to strike down segregation in the United States. They planned it, case by case, court by court. They built a record over decades until they finally went before the Supreme Court with volumes of evidence to prove that separate but equal didn't work. There was no such thing in existence anywhere in the United States. That started the justices thinking. And then what finally convinced them was them going back to the drawing board and looking at the words of the Constitution and realizing that equality can't have two meanings. And they did what they should have done 54 years before, and they didn't do. And they said that segregation in education couldn't exist. So we're all here sitting together because of that decision. Without it, we would not have the society that I live in. And I wouldn't be on the Supreme Court. Neither would any of the other women, and never would have the African Americans who have sat and sit on that court. So, that's only a small part. Most of the good laws that people pay attention to and like, let me talk about the women in the room. Title IX, who are sports athletes. Country went for decades with girls' teams being given no support. Title IX legislation helped to be passed by lawyers. It requires schools to educate kids in sports in equal ways. That affects any athlete in this room. You're doing that because of lawyers. Why is it that you buy products that may not be completely safe, but are more safe than they used to be? You buy drills today, saws. You get protection that helps people from cutting their fingers off. Look around among the older generation. I bet in this community you will find older members of the community that don't have pieces of their fingers because of those saws that before didn't have protective guards. Tort lawyers. Lots of people and lots of politicians don't like them. But those laws help and have helped keep us free. Lawyers help people. They help people navigate the society in a better way. They help you in your relationships with each other, with the government, with your employers, between family members. That is what the law does. It's service to people. So Alex, it shouldn't be just Hispanics. It should be everybody who feels like they want to help people in this particular way. Because you can help people in lots of different ways. But if this appeals to you, it is the most direct way to change how the society functions as a society. Because the relationship with one another is what laws create and govern. Every relationship you have is affected by laws. So if you want to change the way the society works with one another, become a lawyer.
Thank
Good
you
luck
for your
to you.
imparted wisdom.
Good afternoon, Madam Justice. My name is Brittany Peter, and I'm a senior attending the University of the Virgin Islands. I'm majoring in psychology and criminal justice. I'm also the PRO for the Criminal Justice Club. My question for you today is, how have you been able to address challenges such as discrimination against women, especially minority groups?
You know, we spend, or most people, believe that to every problem, there's a silver bullet answer. That one thing will cure the problem. So think about the cancer research that was done years ago. Everybody was spending billions of dollars trying to find the cure for cancer. With genetics and DNA testing, we're finding out that different cancers respond to different things and to different drugs. One drug will work on one kind of cancer, another one works on a different kind of cancer, and there's now a genuine understanding that what causes cancer may not be one thing. If the treatment is different, then there may be more than one reason. Well, it's the same thing with discrimination. There's no one way to fight it, any kind of discrimination. It's in many ways situational. There are discriminations for different reasons, in different ways, expressed in different ways, and that you need to address in different ways. I've chosen myself in my life to treat it as situational. And let me give you a number of examples, okay? The first was the marshal who called me honey in my old courthouse, okay? I knew he never called a male judge honey. He probably would have been demoted, or at least kicked to the basement where nobody would see him, okay? But I sat there, or stood there, and thought to myself, why is he calling me honey? And I realized he felt comfortable with me. I was friendly, I smiled, I talked to people. I didn't think anything of it. But I also knew that it felt like a lack of respect for me, because I'm a judge working in that building. And I thought about that. Actually, in my head, this is all going on. Do I go tell his supervisor? What do I do? And I finally decided, let me make a joke of it. And I went up to him and I said, I won't say his name, I'm making up a name, okay? John. I know you didn't mean anything by calling me honey, and we're friends. But you know, if somebody heard you say that to me, they would think that something funny was going on. I don't think your wife would like that. How about you just call me Judge? He called me Judge. I was at work as a lawyer in a room full of men on a negotiation. And I was one of the leading lawyers on the negotiation. And one of the other side's lawyers looked at me and said, can you get us coffee? And I was sitting there about to say something, like no, when the man I was working with, the partner, looked up and said, no, she doesn't get coffee, she's a lawyer. And he went to the phone and ordered some coffee. I tell that story because that was a different way of it being handled. And sometimes it requires working with others. And discrimination can't be fought alone by the person being discriminated against. People of goodwill have an obligation to get up and do something too. And my friend did. Then the third way. I'm in law school. One of my classmates wanted me to interview with the firm he had worked with the summer before because they had asked him to bring other Yale students to be interviewed. And he asked me to come, sit down to dinner. There's about 10 of us. Now you have to understand, the reason we go to these dinners is because they're paying for food at an expensive restaurant. And the partner, my friend, goes around the room, basically giving a thumbnail sketch of everyone. And he says, Sonia is a Puerto Rican from the Bronx. She's gone to school at Princeton. She's now at Yale. He went around the room doing that with everybody. The introductions finish, and the partner looks at me and says, did you get into Yale only because you're a Puerto Rican? And I looked at him and said, no, I don't think so. And he said, well, you know, that's what affirmative action does. It makes me believe that you're not qualified. And I looked at him and I said, well, maybe if you wait and see my resume, you can decide whether asking me that question is appropriate or not. And I let it be. And the next day, I filed a complaint with the placement office at the law school. Now, today I'd have a lot more thinking to do about that. Because today with the internet, everybody would have known that I filed a complaint. Back then, a lot of people knew because minority students from across the country wrote to me to tell me about similar experiences. But I went ahead, I filed a complaint. The firm was barred from interviewing on campus for a while. The partner was barred for interviewing at Yale at all for a longer time. And there was an open conversation about this happening to other minorities. You see, I had figured out that if he felt comfortable enough to do that to me, that a lot of other people felt comfortable enough to do that to others. And that someone, and someone with my credentials, because it had to be someone as well qualified and as successful as me, who would take the chance and make it public. And that's what I did. I say today I have to think about it because back then everybody else knew about it, but it died its own natural death, okay? Today, every firm would know it. It might be harder to get a job. There's lots of things that you have to think about today. But at least at that moment, I knew what was right to do, and I did it. So, those are just three. There are other examples in my book of ways that I have worked on, publicly and privately, ending discrimination against me as a woman and as a Hispanic, as a Latina.
Thank you.
What do I do today? I try very, very hard. I'm not always successful to make sure that I hire women law clerks on the Supreme Court. We have an unequal number of male law clerks to female law clerks. It's like 2 to 1, 3 to 1, when we're 50% of law schools. This year and last, I have had women to 1 man. I've been lucky. They've just been better qualified. I don't suffer lack of quality for anything. But I don't think you need to when it comes to treating people equally. You just have to be willing to judge people as individuals and to look at the strength in each person as a person. I am a member of the Women's Bar Association. There are the big and the little things. I don't rule based on this belief about equality for women, but I guide what I do in life by the belief that I have to treat people equally to set the example that everybody else should treat each other equally. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Justice.
Are there questions? Yes. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Justice Sotomayor. My name is Jerome Filbert. I'm a freshman studying psychology. And my question for you is, what do you think self-determination means for U.S. possessions, such as the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico? Should equal voting rights be or statehood be considered?
How do I answer this in not upsetting people? Remember, I come from a Commonwealth. That was also a territory of the United States. And I'm exquisitely familiar with the tension surrounding self-determination. It is an issue that for Puerto Rico is the center of its existence. When I say the center, I mean the center. I have a friend who once said, you can take any Puerto Rican you want, ask them to argue any three of the statuses, independence, commonwealth, or statehood, and they'll do a good enough job of arguing every position equally well. You know why? Because every one of them has held the position at some point in their life. I don't know if the same obsession is present in the Virgin Islands. The problem with the term self-determination is that in any bilateral relationship of any kind, I'm not talking about a territory with the United States, I'm talking about any relationship that two people have, both parties have to agree. Without that agreement, the relationship can't and won't exist. And so when you think about, for the territories, self-determination, it can only mean one thing. It would be independence. But even that is not guaranteed if the mainland says no. Because the status quo would exist. You can go to war. Where does that get you? For me, self-determination is each of our islands determining what they think is best for themselves and then going out and working at making it happen. You can't, it won't happen sui generis. It won't happen because you say you want it. It will only happen if you begin doing what everybody does to change a relationship. You lobby for it. Whether it's in marriage or in friendship or in any relationship that you have. To change it, you have to work at it, and you have to convince the other person that it's the right thing to do. That's how you get anywhere in changing any relationship. I don't know the answer for the Virgin Islands, and I certainly don't even know the answer for Puerto Rico. In large measure, and I'm the first to say, I don't live there. I've lived in New York and in Washington, D.C. And now with this job, I'm never going to live there. I said that as a joke. But I do think that the people who live in all of these communities, the choice, the first choice is yours. And then the second choice is you working to achieve that achievement. Do I think it's possible? Yes. But I think it takes a lot of hard work. And it takes a lot of effort and commitment to making a change. So, I don't know what you want, but if you have a clear idea of what the right answer is, go make it happen.
Thank you.
Now, what did I miss back there? Hello. I missed your picture.
Good afternoon, Madam Justice Sotomayor. I am Iris Batiste, a freshman honor student from the Albert A. Sheen campus, majoring in accounting. In some biographies, you were referred to as a child of dreams. Besides being a lawyer, can you tell us about another dream you held that has made a positive difference in that community or informed your career as a justice?
I never dreamt about being a Supreme Court justice. I didn't know what a Supreme Court justice was when I was a kid. Didn't learn about it until probably, I may have heard about it in high school, learned a little bit more, a lot more in college, and really understood it when I got to law school. But you can't dream about what you don't know. My dreams have always been step by step. I don't believe in dreaming necessarily the impossible first. I take every problem I face and I break it down, and I figure out step by step how to achieve it. I gave you an example in writing. But when I was a kid, I started with very simple dreams. I was going to be the first member of my family on the mainland to receive a college degree. I was. I was going to be the first of my entire family anywhere, here or Puerto Rico, to become a lawyer. I did. I wanted, back then, to be a prosecutor, and I did. And then I figured out I wanted to be a judge. But I wanted to be just a trial judge. And I don't think until I got to law school that I fully understood the difference between state and federal courts. And then I started dreaming about being a federal judge. Now, once I got to be a federal judge, I stopped dreaming about my professional career. In large measure because I loved being a district court judge, and I didn't want anything else. I was forced into being a court of appeals. Literally. I was asked by the then president before his re-election whether I would want my name put in for the Court of Appeals, and I said no. And I told a couple of friends who had beat me up, literally, and pushed me into saying yes the second time I was in. And the day of my swearing in as a Court of Appeals judge, my closest friend is standing next to me, and I looked at her and I said, have I made the mistake of my life? I fear that down the line someday I'll wake up and say, I'm not happy doing this. I was happy back then. Why did I do it? Because I heard a woman I greatly admired, Constance Baker Motley, the first African-American federal district court judge in the country. Connie Baker Motley had been a part of Thurgood Marshall's litigation team. She argued 10 Supreme Court cases, won 9, and won the 10th 20 years later when the Supreme Court reversed the case she lost. She had a batting average before the Supreme Court of 10 of 10. Connie had been a litigator in the civil rights movement, Bronx Borough president, a member of the state's, the first person of color in New York City. And in a moment where another person of color wouldn't take on a particular job, I was present, so were a number of other judges. And Connie gave a speech that said, basically, we don't have the right to say no. Those of us who have been given opportunity have an obligation to always say yes, to move our community forward in every direction that we humanly can. It's not a choice. It's an obligation. She didn't convince that other judge. She convinced me. That's why I said yes when I was called the second time. So, I've dreamt of silly things, but I've made them happen by working at them. Been a horrible swimmer, still am. But when I was 50, I decided I at least had to learn how to really save myself. And I took swimming lessons and swam 20 laps without stopping. I was very proud of myself. I can't dance salsa. Couldn't. I'm still not a very good dancer. But I wanted to get up and dance. So I took some lessons, and the guy I was dancing with, the instructor, was trying to teach me, and I couldn't do anything he said. So he would then hold me and try to show me. And the one thing I can do, and it surprises my colleagues, is I can follow. He danced a step, I mimic him. He danced a step, I follow him. If I see you dancing and you have a body that shows me the rhythm, I'll follow your rhythm because I can't find it. And so when I'm in a place that with a bunch of people dancing, I watch to see the guy whose rhythm I can follow. And that's the guy I say yes to. Dreams have to be big and small. I think you have to start with the small ones. You have to start with the steps. You got to figure out what you want as the big dream. I wanted to be a judge. I didn't understand it. But I also knew I had to take some steps to get there. And so I made each of those steps a goal. And that's what I think you have to do with everything in life. Dream not just of what you want to become, but the kind of person you want to be. I've worked hard, and I describe it in my book, to change myself from the person I was. It's hard to believe that I was actually not just shy, but very withdrawn and not open to people. I started by asking the children of my friends to hug me every time they saw me. And I told them, I don't get hugs. And I don't know how to give hugs. Teach me. And there are young men now in their 30s, all of these children, who I walk into the room and give me the biggest bear hugs you can imagine. And I know how to give them a big hug back. And slowly, by doing that, I learned how to reach out and be more open to people. So for me, every step of my life has been a dream to take one additional step forward. And even when I'm knocked back, I pick myself up and I try again. And if I take a half step, I'm happy. Then I start again, and I take another half step, and then sometimes I jump a lot of leaps. But what would I tell you about your dreams? All of them are possible, just not immediately. So dream the small steps. Take them and enjoy them each moment, and then reach the big ones. Good luck to you. Got it. All right. Hello.
Good afternoon, Justice Sotomayor.
Louder.
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
My name is Devon Williams, and I I'm a senior major in accounting.
Loud.
Oh, what should you do? Just go to the accounting school?
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Madam Justice. My name is Devon Williams, and I'm a senior major in accounting, and I am the treasurer of the Student Government Association, as well as the former student representative to the Board of Trustees.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. And the final question is, if you only had one inspirational statement to say to millennials, what would it be?
Don't travel to the road of success alone. You know, I started by saying that no one achieves what they do by themselves. And so the only way that you could measure true success was the day of my inauguration, when I got up to take the oath. Sitting in the audience was my entire family from New York and Puerto Rico. All of my friends from grammar school through every job I've ever held. And I saw tears in their eyes. And I knew then, because they were with me, that I had succeeded. Because without them, it would have been an empty victory. So, yes, concentrate on success. Work hard at it. But don't forget the people who love you. Take them with you. Good luck.
Thank you, Justice Sotomayor. We are so honored to have had you in our midst today, and we will have a special UVI recognition that will follow. So as I ask our chair and our president to leave the stage to prepare for the recognition,
I think we all.
I will invite our VI Youth Ensemble back to give us a brief interlude, and I will introduce them now. We have Sherwin Williams on the saxophone, UVI student. Tariq Lionel on the piano, UVI student. Uriel Rogers on the bass, Charlotte Amalia High School student. And Joshua Farrell on the drums, Antilles students. And their mentors, of course, Rowan Creaky and our very own UVI artist-in-resident, Dion Parsons. Take it away, young men. So in just a moment, we will have Justice Sotomayor, our President, Dr. David Hall, and our Chairman of the UVI Board of Trustees, Henry Smock, on stage to do something that we usually do at graduation, but we couldn't let this pass. So, Dr. Hall.
Honorary degrees are bestowed upon individuals by universities as a way to recognize their outstanding achievement and to indicate that those achievements are things that the institution greatly admires and who they desire their students to emulate. It is a sacred tradition which the University of the Virgin Islands fully embraces. Today, we will bestow this honor upon an individual whose contributions and achievement demonstrates that she is more than worthy of this degree. So I now ask the Chairman of the Board of Trustees, Attorney Henry Smock, to present our honorary degree candidate. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, dreamer, trailblazer, accomplished lawyer, judge, and Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Her journey through life and the legal profession is worthy of our honor and recognition because she has excelled at every level. Sonia Sotomayor graduated valedictorian from Cardinal Spellman High School in the Bronx, and then attended Princeton University, where she graduated summa cum laude. She was also awarded the Pine Prize, which is the highest academic award given to Princeton undergraduates. She chose to pursue a career in law and entered Yale Law School, where she was an editor of the Yale Law Journal and received her JD degree. She worked initially in the public sector as an assistant district attorney in Manhattan, and then in the private sector, making partner at a commercial litigation firm where she specialized in intellectual property litigation. But even in the private sector, she embraced fully her pro bono commitment and served on the board of the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund. She was appointed as U.S. District Court Judge for the Southern District of New York by President George H.W. Bush and was its youngest judge. Later, she was nominated for the U.S. Second Circuit Court of Appeals by President Bill Clinton and conferred by the Senate. During this period, she taught law as an adjunct professor at New York University Law School and Columbia Law School, inspiring students to fully embrace the deeper and sacred calling of the legal profession. On May 26, 2009, President Barack Obama announced his nomination of Sotomayor for the Supreme Court, the highest honor that any lawyer could ever obtain. In this role, she has continued to make history by being on the right side of justice, equality, and liberty. She was among the majority in two landmark Supreme Court rulings, one upholding a critical component of the 2010 Affordable Care Act, and also being in the majority when the Supreme Court handed down its historic decision that made same-sex marriage legal in all 50 states. And even in her dissents, she has been a voice for civil liberties and affording protections to citizens in the face of police stops and searches. Her presence on the court and her career as a lawyer has left an indelible mark on the legal landscape. Her care for others, especially students, makes her a national treasure. And therefore, we are proud to bestow upon Justice Sonia Sotomayor the degree of Doctors of Laws with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities appertaining thereto. In recognition of this degree, Chairman Smock will vest you with a hood, and I will present you with a diploma from the University of the Virgin Islands. We are humbly honored and thrilled to have you counted as one of our graduates. I indicated earlier in my introduction of Justice Sonia Sotomayor that this was a special year because it is the year that the Virgin Islands commemorates the centennial. But it is also the year that the university celebrates its 55th anniversary. And in the spirit of those dual celebrations, or this dual commemoration and celebration, the university has commissioned a special medallion, which on one side recognizes the centennial, and on the other side recognizes the 55th anniversary of the university. And we are honored to present the first medallion of this special 2017 collection to Justice Sonia Sotomayor. The inscription reads, "In honor of your impeccable and groundbreaking service on the U.S. Supreme Court and your memorable and inspiring visit to the University of the Virgin Islands." We would not be here today, and the Virgin Islands would not have been blessed with the presence of Justice Sonia Sotomayor if there was not an advocate, a person who was very committed to making this happen. And so we would like to present the second special medallion to the Honorable Wilma A. Lewis. It reads, "With deep gratitude for your dedicated and enlightened service to the U.S. District Court and your leadership in securing Justice Sotomayor's visit to the University of the Virgin Islands." Thank you.
And at this time, I'd like to invite our bookend to our wonderful ceremony today, our Student Government Association President from the Albert A. Sheen campus, Ms. Jeanette Ferdinand.
An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of humanity. Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. Good afternoon. My name is Jeanette Ferdinand, the Student Government Association President on the Albert Acheen campus. I humbly stand before you today to deliver the closing remarks at this significant event. It is a student to be in the presence of such greatness. On behalf of the student body, I would like to take this opportunity to commend the Honorable Justice Sonia Sotomayor on her role in the ruling of the Affordable Care Act, which has extended healthcare coverage to millions of Americans, especially those of low-income households. Honorable Justice Sotomayor is a remarkable example of how one selfless act can invigorate the lives of many. She is also our first Hispanic Supreme Court Justice and the third female on the Supreme Court, who was also selected by our first African-American president, President Barack Obama. In the words of Mark Twain, the two most important days in our lives are the day we were born and the day we find out why. Everyone finds their passion in different ways. The Honorable Justice found her purpose at a young age while watching the television show Perry Mason. Thereafter, she has followed her dreams, conquered her challenges, and has triumphed above all odds. So my closing message to each of you today is, it is imperative to discover your purpose, and when you do, you too must persist against all odds. Make your why greater than your how, and continue to push towards your goals, just as the Honorable Sonia Sotomayor did. There will be challenges and there will be doubt. They are not obstacles, but all part of your journey. I echo the sentiments of Nelson Mandela when he said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." We thank you, President Hall, for the opportunity to contribute to this significant event at the University of the Virgin Islands. Thank you.
As president, I want to take 1 minute, and I know we are over time, but just to thank this community for all that has been done to make this a very, very special event. I believe that this student convocation will go down in the history of the University of the Virgin Islands, and it would not have occurred but for a lot of hard work by members of this community who have worked together. And so I would just like to quickly call out their names, and I would just ask that you hold your applause to the end, but I know this could not have happened without these individuals. Ms. Una Dyer and members of the President's Office, Ms. Gail Steele in the Board of Trustees Office, Mr. Charles Martin and the entire physical plant, Ms. Denise Humphreys and members of the RICO Center staff, Michelle Neves, Tamika Williams, Raul Carrillo from Institutional Advancement and the entire staff of Institutional Advancement, Chief Glassford and the security team on this campus, Student Affairs on both campuses led by Deans Moore and Dean Rivers and all of those in their areas, our IT department led by Tina Koopmans, Dean Emily Williams, who is over our honor program, and all of the honor students who participated, the students who submitted questions, our SGA leadership, our music department, and the group that performed here today, our athletic director, Roberto Ramos, Felipe Ayala, and Government House. There are numerous other individuals whose names may not have been called, but who contributed greatly to this spectacular event. Please join me in thanking all of those individuals who contributed. And as we now finally close, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to Justice Sotomayor for not only being here, but for being so generous in your time, for being so open and welcoming to this community, and we will never forget your generosity and gift to the University of the Virgin Islands. Thank you. And thanks to all of you.
So, as we stand to wish a UVI farewell to Justice Sotomayor, I ask that we stand as she exits, and no one can leave the room until we have advised you that you can. So let's give her a hearty UVI Buccaneer thank you.